Hey, have you heard the news? Donnie from TMNT is everyone's favorite turtle. And why is that? Because he's a weeb. Like you and I, he's an enjoyer of anime. And if you've seen the movie, you know that Attack on Titan is his favorite. Also, he wears a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure hoodie, which is a JoJo's reference. I don't know if you do that or not, but yes. So today I want to kind of explore that idea and figure out what are some of our favorite classic cartoon characters' favorite animes. Alright, so how this is gonna work is that I just picked a bunch of random animated characters from everyone's favorite childhood shows, and I'm just gonna decide what they like based on their personality and what we've seen them enjoy in the shows that they are from. Like I mentioned earlier, Donnie's is confirmed to be Attack on Titan. That's his favorite, and also JoJo's because we see the movie. Also, if you haven't seen the movie, I highly recommend it. That movie is fantastic. Animation just keeps finding ways to one-up itself. Between this, Puss in Boots, and Into the Spider-Verse, it's just all amazing, and it's just nice that we get to enjoy them. Anyway, so starting off, the character that I picked is going to be Dexter from Dexter's Lab. Now, this one was kind of like a softball throw because if you've seen the show, you know that he enjoys mechas and any, giant robot type things. He even has a bunch of episodes where he is Voltron, basically, him and his family. So easily, I think Dexter's favorite show in his spare time that he's watching while he's maybe in his lab or whatever he throws it on is probably going to be Gundam. That's just the easiest one. And if you want to throw in like any of the other like Code Geass, whatever like that, any of the mecha anime, that's definitely going to be up his alley. Like I mentioned, it's just a softball toss for me. That was nothing really too hard to read into that one. That's just definitively, that's his. You can't even argue that one. All right, next up we have Jake Long from American Dragon. Jake Long. What do we know about him? He's a dragon. He's the Mac Daddy dragon from the NYC. Is that the words? I forgot the word. So yes, and he is very, in himself, very hip-hop, I would say. That's his influence between where he grew up at and just the way he acts on the show and the stuff that he's into. So I figure with that, you don't want to go too hard on the nose and pick one that's like Dragon Ball Z because he's a dragon. No, I think you'd be like, nah, I'm not into that. I think he would be into Samurai Champloo because of the soundtrack itself, and just samurais are always cool and sword fighting, and I feel like that would just be like perfect for him. He'd be like, oh, this is sick. He's just watching while he's nodding his head, listening to music, and also seeing these cool visuals and fight scenes. That's just Jake Long for me. That's what screams it to me, besides the obvious dragon shows. And then on the rival network, we have SpongeBob from Nickelodeon. What would his favorite show be? What we know about him, he's a fry cook, he's into karate, he's into taking care of his pets. I wanted to say like his favorite would be like some sort of kung fu type show, maybe like a Baki or like a Kegen Asura, but I feel like that's just a part of him. He doesn't really like feel that way. I don't think he associates too much with like kung fu. I think karate. He only does that in his spare time, and I feel like he would more so relate to Aggretsuko, just because it is like a workplace anime, and he kind of like has this, or she has a separate life within her life. So I feel like SpongeBob himself would identify with that, and he'd watch that and be like, oh, this is me. I feel like this most of the time. Although he does enjoy his job, and from Aggretsuko, she doesn't really super enjoy her job, but I just feel like he would fit that vibe, and it wouldn't be too like harsh on him and his personality. I feel like if you give him anything too crazy, he might just get overwhelmed and overstimulated and be like, no, I don't want this, turn it off. But yeah, I feel like Aggretsuko kind of just fits with him, and I feel like he might also think she's hot just because he's a freak. The Bob is a freak. All right, sticking in the Bob realm, Bobby Hill from King of the Hill. We know that little man would be in the anime if it was more prevalent while the show was airing. I think when he goes to Japan, that might be the only episode where he kind of like delves into like that side of him, and I feel like he would just really be super into it, just because most of us growing up in high school, where we don't really fit in with like any of the other clubs like sports and stuff like that, anime is kind of what we leaned on, and like it was our own little thing, our own little escape. And I feel like Bobby would just be super into it, but I feel like he would be really into Sailor Moon. He would just love like the outfit changes, the choreography of it all, and just like the love story between Usagi and Tuxedo Mask. Like that would just be him. And of course he would have to hide it from Hank. Hank would be like, whoa, what the hell are you watching? And he would just find ways to watch it with his parents right around. Oh, and it's funny because if you've seen like multiple King of the Hill episodes, there's an episode where they have like their computer and it's in like a separate room, like a basement kind of whatever, and I feel like Bobby would be on there watching Sailor Moon in parts, like Sailor Moon episode 1 part 1, Sailor Moon episode 1 part 2, like that would be his vibe. He would be super into Sailor Moon, and he would pretend to be into cooler shows. like Yusuke and all his friends. He'd be like, you know what, I watched the show. But no, really, we know you're watching Sailor Moon. Now, I know most of these have been anime, but I feel like the one exception would be Ben Tennyson from Ben 10. I don't think he would watch anime, like he probably would in his spare time, but I feel like he'd be more into like the Sentai, Super Sentai-esque world, and I feel like he would be a real big fan of Kamen Rider. He would just watch and be like, that's me, I transform, they transform, like that would be totally up his wheelhouse, that would be the word. I was trying to say two things at once. That would be in his wheelhouse. I feel like he would just watch any of the Kamen Rider shows. He'd probably be a big fan of like, I don't have the exact timeline on what he'd be watching, but I feel like it'd be Kamen Rider W, like something like that, where it's like more superhero-esque. And yeah, I think he would just always have a place in his heart. And obviously, like regular Power Rangers, he'd be into, but I feel like Kamen Rider would be a little cooler for him, and he'd be like, yeah, that's totally what I'm into. Especially if like a lot of the times they fight like alien life forms, he'd be like, oh, that's what I do, and he would just be super into it. Alright, then we have Finn and Jake from Adventure Time. What would they be into? This lovable little duo here. I feel like whatever Finn would watch, he'd make Jake watch, but I feel like Jake would like his own things separately. So I feel like Finn is super into, you know, he is like cool, like into adventuring and stuff like that, but I feel like in his heart of hearts, he is like a romantic and he enjoys like nature and all that stuff, and he does love food himself, so I feel like he would just be really into any Ghibli films, any of them. He would just be like in awe, just like the animation of it, like, oh, this looks like the Land of Ooh, and the food looks so delicious, and he would just be captivated by it. I don't think you want to give him anything too crazy. Like SpongeBob, he would kind of feel a little overstimulated maybe, and be like, he would get super hyped up and be like, let's go, adventure, let's do something, and Jake would kind of have to like calm him down. So I feel like Ghibli films kind of would balance out the adventuring in his life, and he would just be super into it. That would be totally his vibe. And like I said, Jake would be into it, but Jake would be into his own things, and I feel like Jake would just be strictly into Food Wars, because food, and he loves food, and just maybe like the over-sexualization of it, maybe Jake would be like, oh, this is kind of hot, and watch it like on his own. But yeah, I feel like he would be more so into it for the food aspects of it, because he's a food-loving man, or dog rather, and yeah, that's what they would enjoy watching in their spare time. Side note, just imagine like BMO playing a Ghibli film, like super analog style, like that would be just like super aesthetically pleasing to see. Alright, then we have Bob's Burgers. I'm not going to pick Bob specifically, I'm going to pick his children, of course, because I feel like Bob, that ship has sailed for him. He's not into that, he's into his own stuff. But I feel like the kids though, Jean, Louise, and Tina, they would all be into their own shows respectively. Alright, so starting off with Louise, as much as she seems like a hard ass, like she's into like, you know, being a leader and adventures and like being a tough girl, we all know that she has that soft side to her where she enjoys things like Gucci Kopi and stuff like that. So I feel like she would lean into that more so with like her shows that she watches, and I feel like she'd be really into magical girls, and she would definitely be into Cardcaptor Sakura. That would be totally up her alley. She would enjoy everything from it, although she would probably not admit it to anybody else that she watches it. I feel like in her spare time she would totally be into that, and that would just be like something that she vibes with a lot. And she'd probably like, you know, you make up for things that you're not into when you watch certain things. Like I'm not strong, but I like watching shows about strong people, you know, like Baki or whatever. I would never beat anybody's ass like that, but I identify like, oh, I could see that, and that's cool. So I feel like Louise would be kind of the same way. Like her herself, she's not super girly or whatever, but she can watch Cardcaptor Sakura and be like, oh, I could do that if I wanted to, but I'm not gonna. But I do really like watching it. It's really cute, whatever. And that would totally be her vibe. Gene, we all know he's into the music and stuff like that, so it was pretty easy to give him just any musical anime, but for him I picked Given. It's the best musical show, I would say, and he would be into like the instrumentations of it. He would probably even be into the lovey side of it himself, and yeah, that would just be an easy one for him just because he's just so into music, and he's kind of weird. So it was either I pick something musical or something really weird that he'd be into, and you couldn't go wrong with either one. And I feel like also he would watch whatever like Tina and Louise would watch too. He'd be like totally just into any of it, but I feel like his personal favorite would be like Given, just because musical, love, all that stuff, that's just totally Gene's vibe. And then Louise, she's boy crazy, we know this, so you could pick any boy love, pretty much she would be into it. But I feel like for her, she enjoys seeing butts and stuff like that and bodies, so I picked Free, the swimming anime. She would totally be into that just because it's like a bunch of ripped dudes swimming, their butts are being shown, stuff like that. She's just a little freak, she's into that stuff. So again, they all three would probably get together and watch it, although I think if they were watching together, Louise would probably put something cooler on to make her seem like she's cooler than what she is. But yeah, the rest of them, they would probably be into whatever each other watched. That's what we love about them, is that they're so close as a family, and they would all share this experience together. I feel like none of them would really get super shamed for what they watch, and I feel like they would all, as a collective unit, be into anime, and Bob would just be like, what is this? And then he would just keep walking. Typical dad stuff, right? Typical dad behavior. And finally, we can't leave the good old PBS out of this. I picked Arthur from Arthur. He would be into Berserk. He'd want to be a badass, and he'd want to kill people. DW makes him feel these ways. People around him sometimes make him feel these ways. He's something inside that poor boy. There's a deep darkness within him, and I feel like Berserk would just be the one that he would identify with the most. He'd be like, you know what? One day. Although I could see him also not being allowed to watch anime at all and just being a PBS kid, ironically, watching whatever PBS shows on. But yeah, definitely would be a Berserk kind of guy. And Buster definitely would be like egging him on, like, yo, have you seen Berserk? And then they'd be like, oh, no way, and they'd get into it together. And although I feel like Buster might be into something different, but they would be, as a friendship together, they would enjoy Berserk. And yeah, Arthur would identify with it more, which is kind of concerning. But hey, Arthur's a good kid. And that's going to do it for all the shows that I think your favorite animated characters probably watched growing up or currently in their own timelines if they existed. Whatever you think I missed, let me know down below. Comment down like some characters that you think I should talk about next time if you'd like to do that. Any other animated characters and what they might possibly watch in their universe. You can do that. If I got some of these wrong, which I probably did, you can let me know all that down below. Also subscribe down below, follow down below, all that fun stuff. Also go watch the new TMNT movie. It's fantastic. It didn't make nearly as much money as I thought it would. It should make more. It's a great movie. It's fantastic even. Yeah, recommend it highly. But yeah, so until next time, go watch more animated shows. Yeah.